All right, we are live within Clay.
Do you want to tee this up, Kellen? The
Oh,
intro.
with
I'll
the
do I'll do the theme music in the background
yeah. Well, I
that
think
gets created as we go.
yeah. The intro to this is Tenzin and I had the idea to create a clay community where the way I've been describing it is like we can co-learn, so it's kind of like not like necessarily like a teaching community, we're co-learning. And so conceptually we talked about like getting together and doing sort of like this interview style live teaching. And I think that was actually Jesse's idea. I don't even know that we came up with that. And so we're doing that, I think, with Jesse now. How's
I
that?
think,
Excited to be here.
yeah, and Jesse is our first victim slash user, whatever, depending on how this goes, could be a victim. But I think this is a kind of a 0 to 1 tutorial of like how do I get value out of Clay quickly for my use case. And I think just for this specific one, we're just gonna have him run through like, hey, I have a list of 3 or 5 customers, whatever it might be, or type of customers I want to get into. How can I find more of those? Uh, how can I figure out if they are actually people I want to sell to? So do some sort of like lead scoring or pseudo lead scoring. And then yeah, we can go from there and see how much we get done. Maybe we do more too.
Sounds
Or
good.
not. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, Jesse. Where do you think the first place to go is?
Yeah, so I'm greeted with a view of my workspace. We've got a Clay starter table and build your first list. Um, I'm pretty used to the concept of building lists on other platforms. So if I'm seeking comfort, that's where I want to go. If I'm seeking novelty, it's the Clay starter table because I haven't built a Clay starter table. So I'm just kind of curious to see what that even looks like.
Yeah, I think this is
Interesting.
just a list of I don't actually know what you're supposed to do with that, but I guess just play around with the different things. Yeah, it might be good to just kind of get familiar with just the enrichments in there before we dive into accounts because there's a bunch of cool stuff in there. Um, you wanna hop into this? So if you go back to add column and see like middle or close down, it says add enrichment right above suggestions at the bottom.
Yeah.
Click on that. So there's a bunch of stuff in here, which can be cool or be kind of overwhelming. I think the 2 things that I think about, or when I initially saw Clay, just so like as like a very base case that was useful, is the ability to waterfall. And so I think what's interesting about Clay is they are not a data provider, but like a data aggregator. So they go and buy all these credits from a bunch of different providers. And that's useful for finding emails or finding phone numbers because sometimes, like if Apollo doesn't have it, then you're kind of screwed if you're just using Apollo. But if you wanted to have like a waterfall where it goes through all different providers until it finds an email, as an example, that's a great place to start. So if you scroll up just a little bit, just to show that, keep on scrolling up, keep on scrolling up, scroll. All right. So where it says work email right there,
Yeah.
you click on that.
Oh,
So
cool.
we won't do anything here, but you can see like if you click on that work email thing with the waterfall multiple providers, it goes through and it can actually kind of like waterfall down until you find a given email, which is pretty useful, right? It can go from like the cheapest to the most expensive, and they also do validation with they have zero bounce here, but what's the other one called? Unbounce. That's
Never
pretty good.
bounce. I use never bounce.
Yeah. So that's pretty solid in terms of like, all right, cool, you got the email, and then is this actually an email that is risky or could land me in the spam folder because you debounce. So that's at a very base level. If you were to use Clay for nothing else but just enrichments, like getting emails and phone numbers, I think that'd be useful. Just because I think we've all run into this where you have like one provider and then they can't find an email and you're like, well, I'm screwed. Like I just can't find an email for that person, or I have to go digging around the internet.
So is the idea, Tenzin, that I would basically select um this particular category of data that I'm looking for. And then I can add that into a column here. And then basically when it searches for data, I know I haven't put in any other filters, but when it searches for data, it's going to bring me contacts at Service Bell using whatever
The way
filter I apply.
the way I would look at it is like, think of it like it doesn't bring you data. Think of it as like you're looking at the data you have, right? So what we currently have is like 10 or 11 records, and we have 3 columns for
Right.
each of these records. Inside of that middle one, though, that's like an enriched column. So click like Service Bell. We have all this there, right? So what we can do when we add columns is be like, given that I have this, now get me this, is essentially what we're always doing. And so in order to say find an email, we'd want to actually have like we'd have a person. So you could say like enrich from Service Bell would be the next step, and be like, give me the CEO, right? And then you get that name, and then you would start extracting the contact stuff typically.
I guess the question I had is, since it had those links to like Apollo and different data providers, it seems to me that it has the capability to license data from those providers, but I might have misunderstood that.
No, it does. What I'm saying, the missing gap is identifying that person. We do have Service Bell. We do have a way of getting email addresses of a person. There's not a defined person. So we'd want to enrich to find these people, then go source these contact data.
So
And I think that's an important distinction, is like right now we're looking, they typically group it into like account level tables, although yeah, I guess you can kind of mix and match, but I separate the two just to make it easier, like account level and then contact level. So like all the enrichments you'd be using for this, and to answer your question, Jesse, like you're correct. It's like you would use one of the like some of the input data. So you'd have the name and like the LinkedIn URL, and then you'd use the enrichments, and it'll create a bunch of other columns of the potential phone numbers as it waterfalls down the thing. And maybe we can just kind of like show you just so you kind of see it like happening. It's a lot easier to do than tell. So if, maybe we can do like an enrichment for a company. We lost you.
Yeah, you're like,
am I gone?
oh, now you're here.
Okay.
The screen's not sharing. I don't know if that was intentional.
I enabled sharing for you guys is what I was just doing.
Oh.
So if you want to share now, I thought you were saying you wanted to show an example.
No, we'll help you.
Oh, no. Sorry. I meant like you can go click through.
Oh. Still
Yeah,
me.
sorry.
Still me. I'm
Still
on.
you. All you. Passing the ball back.
Okay. Are you
So we go back to the add column, or the add column, add enrichment. And we'll just do one just for shits and gigs here. So if you go to see company data right there, the top in the blue. Oh yeah, I guess you're there. So what's a useful thing if we're thinking through like revenue data is important, or competitors? I've never used that one before. Well, let's use maybe site traffic, because I think that's pretty like depending on what you're selling, that's a good proxy for like the size. Like as an example, I worked at Fastly before, and they're a cloud infrastructure company, and basically we got paid on gigabytes delivered, for lack of a better way of describing it. So like a good proxy for that is like, hey, if you're like a high traffic site, you're gonna be pushing a lot of data, especially if you have like images and videos. So like we would segment based on the Alexa top whatever. So that's a great way to be like, hey, if I want to do some scoring on a list of accounts, I'm going to find out their site traffic, and then from there be able to like, rank it from maybe the highest traffic sites all the way down to the bottom.
Cool.
So we go to click on site traffic. Oh, we need the actual domain.
No, this will work. Won't it or no?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think you can just go to Enrich Company and click on that domain right there. Yeah, perfect. All right. Yeah, let it rip. See what happens. And so that's what we meant by like the waterfall. So like if it can't find it in that first column, then it'll go to the next one. And then eventually whatever it can find, it'll have in that site traffic column to the right.
This is really cool. So it looks like Clay has some native capabilities to do this itself that it's testing first. And then if it can't do that, it rents out those capabilities from a few other partners.
Exactly. And I think showing Claygent would be cool next. So that's good. And yeah. And then so it's just like a regular spreadsheet now. So if you wanted to, like stack rank based on the largest value, you could just go there. Sort, yeah, 9 to 0 or whatever.
Right.
Boom. And so like
Superhuman is 2,600,000 viewers a month. I assume that's monthly.
yeah, I would assume so.
How I use it.
So another really cool thing
Well,
that I
before,
think,
sorry, before I just now I
yeah,
just
yeah,
got
yeah.
a question. Now my curiosity is piqued, right? So what I'm
Yeah.
imagining is once this information is queued up within the spreadsheet, I'm imagining that there's a capability to eventually be able to tell Clay to customize a message around the different data that is populating these columns. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. And there's I guess a couple ways you could do that. One is you could use like liquid syntax, and just using this example, I don't know how this would fit in, but like just say you were selling some sort of like SEO optimization service, and you wanted to like show them that you've done pre-research on the type of volume they're getting. This is probably a bad example, but you could use like liquid syntax, like, hey, I saw that your site is getting X amount of traffic, and you can use that with any variable that you output in Clay in order to write that. Or what's even cooler is you could potentially even use like a language model to be able to ingest that data and maybe normalize a little bit. So as opposed to like that number, you could say, hey, 2.6 million, right? So it's like it's more like how a human would actually write it, if that's the approach you want to take.
I have a version on that too that I shipped literally last night, which was taking this and doing as like a multiple, like a rounded multiple of something. So like the campaign I was doing, I was running something to ecom stores over 30,000 monthly visitors and then ecom stores over 5,000. And so it would basically say like hi Tenzin, came across your store looking at or like came across blank.com looking for stores in the blank category with over 30,000 site visitors. And then the next line would be like, looks like you're, 5.7x that. Impressive. Right. And like it presents real nice because it's this very like kind of casual conversational way of expressing this number to your point that like I would never be like 2600000. Like that's not a number
Yeah,
that like exists.
Totally.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it looks super nice because it's a way of like having undeniable personalization while also like very like feeling nice and sort of light and sort of human.
And how you talk to another person, right? As opposed to like, I see your traffic is 911491.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Round up.
Right. And so then to take this to the next level, you could apply multiple basically custom interpretations of the data, like waterfall customization. So it's like, I saw that you had X number of visitors. It also looks like you had a job opening for an SEO specialist. So maybe you're ready to ramp up some capability. Is this kind of like the overall approach to how you use Clay to customize outbound messaging?
I think one thing that comes to mind for me as well is like there's tokens, right? So like with site traffic right now is like a token. And
Okay.
then the enrichment columns actually, like if you export, they're not actually there, basically. That's, I think, also important, unless I'm doing something wrong. But like basically, like if you export this right now, the LinkedIn company, like that's there as an enrichment, but your spreadsheet would not have all of that data unless you like map it as columns. And so that can be important because sometimes you're looking at something and you feel like you have it, but you actually have to like go map it. And so it's like you have ultimately everything is a cell. Like it's just going to be a cell. Now you could run like an OpenAI API call as a cell that takes a bunch of other input and creates an output. The table itself doesn't have like intelligence. Like we, the artists, are the ones that flow through that logic like you just had. So a lot of
Right.
times the way that you would maybe do what you said is you would have like if then statements. It's like if it flags for this, also go look at these things. If it hit this and this, personalize this way. If it hit this but not this, do this other way. But the table won't logic that for you, if that makes sense.
I see. Right. So it's not just waterfalling linearly through the table, it can also fork. Those
Sort
would be the conditional.
You
The
have to like
conditional.
build it that way. But
Right,
yeah.
right. Okay, cool.
And if you're lazy, you could use, so you have access to like GPT-4 in here. You could probably provide it with some conditional statements just in natural language as to like, hey, based on, if this then that, it's basically like programming. Then spit out this end result. And you can prompt GPT-4 in a way to be able to kind of go down that decision tree to get to where you want to be. Without, like, because it can be like a little annoying having to like filter based on different things, but you can just throw that all into GPT-4 and it's smart enough to figure that stuff out. So that's pretty cool. I think actually that's a good segue to maybe like we can, because I think ClayGen is one of the coolest things of Clay. And it allows you to do like a lot of the things that previously took a lot of time and having like go to different websites and get information about a company. Now you can just like get it down in one prompt and boom, like you're off to the races. So if we go back to the column and go back to enrichments, so it's add column there. Yep, add enrichment.
Legion?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, he's already got it. Doesn't need it anymore.
Oh, I'm gonna be dangerous soon.
Yeah. So maybe we can just do like a super. I'm trying to think what's like a good use case here. Maybe figuring out if these companies have a offer like a
I found
demo.
some web results. I can show them if you.
Thanks, Siri. Oh no. I didn't mean that. Now they're all going off. So like a use case I've used and I thought it was like valuable is like, all right, so if I want to know whether this is actually like a company that has salespeople, one way I could do it is like you said before, Jesse, is you go through and search LinkedIn and try to find salespeople, like if they're hired at a company, but also it might be that like they don't have any salespeople on there yet, or maybe they're like under business development or whatever it might be. But there's a pretty strong indicator, like heuristic, and it could be like founder-led sales, that if they have like book a demo on the website or whatever it might be, that likely means they want to push you through a sales motion. And if we're selling to salespeople or like have some sort of sales-led product, then maybe that's a good indicator. We can use that. So I think that maybe that's just a good like use case to because it's easy to understand, but we can use Clagent to be able to go search their website. So the domains we have from the enriched company and ask it to return a yes or a no as to whether if there is like it has like a book demo on the website or whatever it might be. So I mean, if you want to run through that, take a crack. And it's in order to pull in another something from the other columns, it's / and you'll see a bunch of like options pop up. So once you start typing, I'd be like, go to this website and look through the website and see if it has, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you want me to literally type what exactly what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Just tell it what to do. Yeah.
Go to the website and what were you gonna tell it?
See if there's a book a demo or anything that indicates that this is a, let's just stick with that. Let's keep it simple.
Okay,
There's demo
and then
booking
you're
link.
saying use the slash
Yep.
and we'll put the company domain in.
Yeah, the top.
That was
I think
LinkedIn.
that's. Yeah.
Sorry, okay, so
Yep. There you go.
this one, type domain.
That's
Yep.
fine.
And then do I just put the domain after this?
No,
No,
that
no,
is-
you're good. You're good.
Oh,
You're
because
good.
that's gonna apply to whatever is in
Yeah.
that room.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, and then should I save and run for the first 10 rows?
Before you do, and just be like, if there is, then reply with yes. If not, then reply with no.
Tenzin, have you found any difference in formatting the little text boxes for these? Whether you try to like keep the same idea in blocks of text or if you just all instructions in one big thing.
Oh, you mean in like the little different parts? Um, I mean, those are all like I because it's all going into the prompt. I imagine it's just like maybe they have like sub prompt within there. I just put it throw it all into to one
Yeah,
thing.
okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah. So what's interesting here is you can actually see like the steps it took to get to this answer. So if you click on one of the cells where it says yes, no, whatever.
Incredible.
Which
Very
is
cool.
which is cool. And it makes sense, right? I mean, Superhumans, a BDC. I think if I'm thinking of the same thing, it's like
Yep.
the email productivity. Yeah.
Pretty dope.
So yeah, you wouldn't expect that on there. This is, and there's one thing to note there is this is using 3.5, which is a lot faster and a lot cheaper of a model. Because you can also for this you can bring in your OpenAI API. So like you're not charged. I think they charge you for a credit in Clay on top of the API credits you'd use for the API. But if you just want to like have that go through Clay and you pay for it through them, then you can do that too. But yeah, it's pretty badass. Can save you a lot of time and like kind of like what we were talking about before in terms of account scoring. But you can also get pretty sophisticated with it, like tell it to go through like multi-directional steps of like visit this website, then go here, find me this information, then provide that back for me. Like
Really
stuff you'd
awesome.
have to like, like 2 years ago you'd have to do manually, which is pretty insane. Yeah. Is there anything on the account side we're missing? I feel like honestly, if you had like had those, now you have kind of like a general understanding. Is there anything that's like unclear to
The
you
only,
as
well, I think
to
the one note I would have too is like one of the ways I look at Clay is like a way to manufacture any data point you want. So like this is sort of like looking at it and being like, oh, what would I want to know next? But I think sometimes I look at it like, what do I want to be able to say to these people? And then like, what would I need to be able to have access to in order to like make that argument? And can I manufacture that in Clay? You know what I mean? And so I think that's like this other capability it has is like, because sort of like this is still like yes no to like a demo thing is still kind of like a bit uh it's like a data, I mean I guess it still counts, but it's like a data point that like you think of that like exists sort of like, do they have sales team, right? Like we could fill, if I was in Apollo I'd be like sales headcount above 3, right? Maybe that's how I'd like proxy that. But I found I've done things like you can use the built with thing, look at their whole tech stack, and then like look at their tech stack to infer the maturity of like security posture, where it's like this concept of like bucketing something that I could not actually filter on and that I actually don't know anything about, but like knowing that I want to be able to have this concept in a piece of copy that's like you're either high maturity, middle, or low, and then like backed into like how could I sort of like manufacture that? Because I found even if it doesn't have to be super accurate, like you have this sort of like artistic interpretation thing where if you can show up to someone with this very thoughtful concept, even if it's a little bit off on the exact mechanics of how you got there, it still presents as like a really, really, really cool thing usually.
Yeah. So there's like ways you can kind of combine and get a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. Like you can look for a demo sign up button you could also see if they have a customer success employee. And so it's like if they have a demo sign up button, but they don't have someone in CS, it's like, well, it seems like you're onboarding customers in the B2B context, but maybe your account executives or the founders are the ones that are managing customer relationships right now. Oftentimes that means that bandwidth gets stretched thin. Customers have a worse experience, and you can start to get into, you know, some value statement or something like that.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
And I think like the Kellen, you bring up a really good point there. It's like, let's steal Ryan Reisert's kind of quote, like, you know, the list is a strategy. But like if you have a hypothesis or a strategy going in before you start doing all these things, then you can build like the workflow around validating that and either like tiering or putting it in a different thing, or that influences the messaging that you actually go to these people with based on the output of what you get from Clay. And you know, the great thing is like before you'd have to spend hours and hours doing that in order to develop this. You can do this in a couple hours, you know, where you get all this information and you have everything enriched and ready to go. And you're like, it's great. And it's like the limit is your creativity, which is the cool thing. Once you get familiar with the tool, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get familiar with the tool, you're like, oh, okay, I can do whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
They should be paying for us for this, honestly.
Yeah, do you guys want to pause here for a second and recap, or do you want to keep diving in? Obviously, this can be cut up and you can edit what I'm saying out right now.
You should find some people. I think, should we rip some contacts off this?
Let's rip some
Yeah.
contacts.
Let's do
So,
it.
so here's a question. Like, I literally don't know how to do this because usually what I do is I actually tend to build mine inline. And it's partially because of like the use case of how my clientele works, right? Where like if I was in a company, I might do it a little bit differently. But like, is there a way that we can just say I only want to find contacts from the things marked as yes? Or do you have to literally delete those to do that? Because I had this
You've got
recently
it,
where
yeah.
I had like 2,000 stores out of store leads. Like 400 matched the criteria I wanted. If you duplicate the table, it duplicates the headers, but not the data in it. And so in order to get only those in order to do a people search against only those 400, I had to delete 600 columns. I exported it, but like because then I lost like the enrichments in the middle of it and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, do you know, like, I mean, the only thing I can think of, although it's not going to work because like you need them all normalized and formatted, like either capitalized or uncapitalized, yes, no. But so to answer your question, I don't actually know how to get from this table to a contact table, if that's what you're asking. Is that what you're asking?
Okay, cool. Yes, but filtered because I can do, yeah, because there's a way
Right.
to, let's see, do, what is it? Actions, right? Like top right, Jesse, actions. I think that you can just search people off this. Yeah.
Okay.
It uses LinkedIn always. But so what it's doing is it's just using the, yeah, it's like finding records based on that. So anyway, so you could use this to like, I hadn't seen that exclude. So you could say like, find me, you know, all sales titles from here, or find me the CRO if they have one or whatever.
Yeah, should we just do that? We're going this way?
Sure. Find founder maybe, since they'll all have that.
Yeah. But your question is like, hey, I have this output, but now I want to filter out the people I don't want to create a new table with.
Yeah, and I think you just can't do it. Because it would be nice to be able to say only, because like what will happen is if we do a founder search, we'll get the founders for all of these things. And so we'll just have, I mean, I guess we could say like exclude like company names, but like, you know what I mean? Like it gets janky.
But before you do that, just X out of this. I want to see if like how this works. It may not. But if you go to the latest column with like the no yeses, and click on it, because I wonder if you can filter. So yeah, filter on this column. Yeah. Oh, no, wait a minute. If you go to that drop down that's in the middle there, I wonder if you can filter based on like a exact match. Like, so if you could put like yes you know.
Right. Does it actually make the data go away though? Like it would make me
No,
think that
yeah.
would like, you know what I mean? It's to me, it would
Yeah,
still.
yeah, yeah. Results.
A lot of times what I do too is I'll just export, like I'll create a column and then like add
Yeah.
all the formatting stuff like
That would be
loading.
useful for them if they could just add some of like the, doesn't have to be like super robust, but like some G Sheet functionality to be able to like, because like there's a lot of times I find where like I have to export to CSV, do some stuff to it, and then kind of bring it back in as a CSV and pull it.
Oh, really? Like what? What's like an example?
Well, like this would be like an
What I would
example.
do,
Like,
Jesse, do add or right click like book demo, like with that column header to the right. Sorry, like the blue part right now. It doesn't have to be in the button. Actually, not in the button. But like the column header itself.
Okay.
And then do insert right. So like,
right,
and
that
then
makes sense.
do formula. And then do the little gear icon to the right. And then click formula.
This is actually a good learning lesson.
And now hit AI. All right. Now do write output or like take the output from and then do slash the Claygent column. Or the bottom one, like the new demo availability. And then
Demo booking availability, this one?
yeah, click that real quick and then click result only. Up, like the top one, basically. Up. No, down. The top of the 5. Go back to the Claygent thing. And then there's 5.
Right below it, yeah.
And then say remove all punctuation or like and remove. Comma, make all letters lowercase.
Sorry, I need to spell punk.
Actually, you don't even have to do it right. It'll know.
Okay.
Remove all punctuation, make all letters lowercase, and only pass through the words yes or no. And yeah, and then hit generate formula. And then take us now hit output is correct. And then like I do tons of this in here, like constantly like create something and like format the hell out of it. Because for me, it like makes it easier. Because then I would just use that. I think it's just like a useful, like, is that like effectively what you go do in like G Sheets?
Yeah.
Like get
Or
that.
yeah. We're using some sort of like functions in G Sheets. Like if they had like minimal, if I mean I guess they have that is a function formula, but
I do wish
like
there was like a V lookup. Like I really
yeah.
had V lookups. Because one thing I do a lot of is like
Yeah.
upload like I'll use like Jordan Crawford's like Blueprint GTM. I'll have a bunch of jobs. I'll enrich the jobs against companies. And then I'll have contact tables and I can get all that and I need to like join them. And that's kind of I haven't figured out how to do it. Outside of that, we just do VLOOKUP stuff.
But like even like what you're saying, like now you have this normalized data. It'd be interesting to be able to go in, filter based on everything that's a yes. So you have those rows left over, and then from there, now you go find people at the
Yes.
yes.
You
Yeah.
can sort of do
That-
like you can. So the thing is, you can do that inline. So that's why I do these inline. It's like Jesse hit add column, and then do
Oh, got it.
like
Oh, and then you create a new table out of that.
no. I'll just do add enrichment, and then I'll do like find contact. Just type like contact, like see it'll suggest things. I think we'll use the LinkedIn one. Scroll down. Right, LinkedIn now. Oh yeah, find contacts at company. So now do title keywords. Like that first little drop down column. Just write founder. And then scroll all the way down on that now. And then do run settings at the very bottom. And then scroll down and then hit use AI. And then say only run if, and then that normalized data column is yes. Oh, my video is unsynced.
Sorry, say that again. Normalized data, where do I write that?
Write only run if, and then that normalized data column is yes. Like new column, the bottom one. Oh no, sorry, you had it. Sorry. It was
Okay. Only run if, and then new column,
yeah.
and then what should the answer be?
Click new column though. Is, and then write is yes.
Okay.
And then hit generate.
Generate formula.
Yeah. You can hit yes. Output is correct.
Oh, it's just JavaScript. Okay. That makes sense.
You can hit yes, Jesse.
Output is
Yeah,
correct.
output's correct. Yeah. And then hit continue to add fields in the bottom. And just put just do name. That's fine. Like you would map whatever columns you would want of this person, but just do the name for now. We can always grab more later.
We'll do name. Okay.
And then hit save and run.
So that would have each, if you were to like just say you did it for sales and you wanted every salesperson, that would go along the x-axis. Like it would for each person there would be a new column created. So you'd be going as opposed to going down the rows. When you're doing it this way. Yeah.
If you I haven't done, so I've only done this when I'm looking for one title. Sorry, my video's all
Right.
So I've only done this.
Yeah.
Like I want like the best title of this in this company is when I've done this.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I was doing it the other way, because there's also like find head count, but so it's like I might use that if I wanted to understand if they had lots. But anyways, like clearly this wasn't really the best. We found one.
Well, we have the sole survivor here, Daniel. I wonder if we can just cap off this session with what do you want to do to Daniel? That sounds weird, but what do you like to do with Daniel, Jesse?
So we know that he has a demo sign up button on his website. We know that he is the founder. So let's just pretend we're selling him like demo summary software. Okay.
Whoa. All right.
Like how would we what would be an approach to taking this to the next level with that? If that's a bad example, no worries. I'm just
Well, this may not work, but I think it's kind of interesting. All right, so we could take a look at all his LinkedIn posts, and we could, and this may not work, but it's interesting, right? Like where we could take a look at all his LinkedIn posts. If he said something, I mean, this won't be a great example, but I'm just being like, hey, is there something this person has talked about in the wild, which we could relate back to the messaging? So we'd be like, hey, Daniel, I saw you were talking about this. Maybe this is a pain or frustration.
Like a LinkedIn post or something, or
yeah, exactly. I mean, it'd be kind of hard. It's like who's going to be talking about like demo summaries, but
one of the ways I do that. Yeah. So the way that I do that, in order to like maximize the amount of sort of like benefit I get from running an enrichment like that, is I'll literally just run the like summaries of their posts, and then I'll say, look at these posts, tell me how it relates back to like this. So instead of me saying like, do they do this? I'll just say, like, tell me what the relation is. And then I'll say, if there isn't one at all, like output this instead, and then I'll use that, and then I'll just have like a backup, because a lot of times it'll like, and what I'll do usually is just be like, I'll make the alternate message be like, hey Tenzin, looked at your LinkedIn post, doesn't look like you
Generic.
talk much about blank.
Yeah.
So I can say like, doesn't look like you post much about demo notes, right? And then maybe I have like
Yeah.
copy that sort of supports this, like maybe you don't give a shit about this.
And that's an interesting approach, because like you could have like kind of like a tier, like obviously if somebody says something that is related to what we care about, that's like gold right there, right? We're going to use that and run with it. Then maybe it's like, hey, I saw that your traffic, and maybe that like the second tier is like, hey, I was looking at your site and I saw that you guys have X amount of traffic per month using the site traffic. And then the third one is, if you can't find anything that matches, then just use the third, which is something generic, right? If we can't find anything that like is worth talking about, taking like almost like a waterfall approach to the messaging, where it's like,
Yeah.
here's tier one all the way down to like, we can't find anything, so let's just use something generic.
The way I do it in my company is like, I'll have a list of like, call it 1,200 leads that this month are going to get a message from my client. And so it's like what you're saying, where it'll waterfall like prioritization. Like, what is the best signal, and whichever amount of those 1,200 match that, like they go into that campaign. And then the second best signal. So like an example, I have a client that does like specialized GTM recruiting for AI centric like reps, basically, like people who sell like AI technology, need to be able to speak to like machine learning scientist people. And will like the top level is like, are they currently hiring for GTM roles? And then we'll be like, hey, you're hiring, here's how we can help. If they're not hiring for GTM, but they're hiring for product, we'll be like, hey, saw you're hiring for these product roles, guessing GTM is going to lag 2 to 3 quarters, would, you know, blah, blah, here's our argument. And then if they're doing neither, that's still a signal, because then it's like, hey, saw you're not hiring for product or sales. Looks like maybe you guys are stagnant a little bit. Would it be helpful if we could help get a rep in here that can help you, you know, blah, 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 whatever. And so you can sort of like create these models of filtration. And to me, the big thing is like trying to show up with these data points that aren't the thing that this person hears all the time. Right? Like, what is the thing that every single other person is like, oh, you're da, 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 da. And like, how do you instead have like a slightly different thing? And I've seen that seems to be quite effective. You know, it's kind of like, look for these arguments that we know have been made, but like nuance them in a way that presents as like unique and sort of different.
Totally. I think it's always good having like almost like opinionated outreach in a sense, you know, where you have like a thesis about this company, and the great thing about Clay and now LLMs is you can do that at scale, right? Where you like can apply that logic across every company. And then you're going in there with a story. So you're not coming across like, hey, I want to sell you this thing. It's like, hey, I saw this is what's going on in your world. And then, you know, the rule of Reddit is, even if you're wrong, then people are more likely to correct you. So you're more likely to get a response if you're like completely swung and missed. So I think that's a really interesting approach. And like tools like this allow you to like automate that and do it at scale, where you can now like actually provide value to people, do the stuff you would normally do as a human before, which would take you a ton of time, but just like instruct an LLM on how to do it and have the requisite data points that are layered in to be able to kind of get to that end result. So
I mean, that's a whole business model. Is like, I have a client where like all I basically did is like implant my logic into like a supply chain of that they have a VA pushing data through. And it presents as like great message. You know, it's like cool because it's like better than plenty of things that have reps. You know, so I think like the opportunity as like a salesperson, if you're like thinking about this, is like, go get so good at this that your skill set isn't the emails you send, but like your brain applied to these companies.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, this is a broader point. We're getting completely off topic here, but like, I was thinking about like who is AI going to help the most, or who, like, you know, like who's it going to support the most? Initially, I was like, oh, like, you know, it'll kind of democratize access to information and provide this, that, and whatever for other people. But like, I think it actually, like, if you're a top performer or you're a performer, you know how to use these tools, like Clay, like TrueBase, like whatever, it's gonna be able to 5-10x your productivity. So like, you know, Callan, like it's a perfect example where you're saying, hey, like now you are selling your creativity and your ability to bring ideas to the table. You can use the tools and the technology to be able to amplify what you already are. So you can just like the time and attention you'd place on one account, now you can do that with 500, 1,000, and still get like the same can't think of a word, but like
Yeah.
hit rate, you know?
I actually
So
think it's going to change. Like, I, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the whole world, actually. What I'll say is for me, it has changed the frequency of which I'm interested in talking to my market and helping my clients talk to the market, because you can show, if you can embed touch points that are so high value because you've like hyper engineered really creative, interesting touch points with value behind them, like you can interact with your market like very different fundamentally. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are kind of looking at this like, how can I use AI to do exactly what I've been trying to do and like do more of it and do it like a little bit better? But I think like there's a whole world of like just changing the way, it's like if you were to almost like remove the idea of even like monetizing these things and just say like you can create these models that can kind of like you can embed your thinking into situations. I think we might think of like what a product looks like differently and who uses a product differently, how long they use it, like what, all of those different things. And I don't know that like defaulting to today's sort of frame of what that looks like is the best use of these things.
No, I think
Totally.
I'm starting to see what you mean, right? I mean, just when you mentioned product development, I think it's like super smart reframing of this, because you're going, okay, part of the product is the way that we reach people with the product and the context that they operate in and the information that they have about themselves and their own ecosystem. So when you can start drawing insights about their ecosystem and pulling that web in front of them in different places, like I could see you're creating landing pages out of this. Sure, you're creating email copy. You're changing the way that you run demos. You're changing
I mean,
marketing.
product itself. Like literally imagine like me being able to like embed like conceptual, like imagine, yesterday I took Jesse's way of building lead magnets and I like embedded it into a thing and now I can like spit a website at it and it will like create ideas that are like derived from his thinking, right? And so it's like if he could do that, now imagine taking that model and then imagine automating the actual work out of it. So now imagine your outreach is sending like personalized lead magnets that are ingesting like, imagine looking at like your prospects like last 2 years of like all web data and aggregating that into an understanding of their likely level of knowledge of your product category and then personalizing your assets not only on like the what information but like the depth of the information based on like their current ranking of that. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
just everything could be done through a quote of someone else. You know what I mean? Like you could never use any argument other than words other people have already said. Like everything you argue could be taking their logic that they've applied elsewhere and like reframing it in your current context and pointing to the citation going like, hey, you said this here, like here's how this applies here, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think UIs and front ends, like we're talking about like a landing page, but like using actual SaaS products will eventually, like right now they're kind of static. You like log into a website, but like if you check out, I think it's like Galileo.ai, you can with a prompt be able to create like a front end and then that generates a Figma design and spits it out. But like in the future, I imagine like I log into Salesforce, probably not Salesforce, maybe something else, but like you log in somewhere and like based on who I am and my, how I work and how I operate, the thing will dynamically update over time. And like a front end gets generated as I go through things based on who I am and what I'm receptive to and what makes me most productive. Or we're just like talking to the AI and it just does the thing for us, kind of like a her type thing. But maybe a few years left of that. And maybe once we get to that point, we're not even needed anymore. So, this is all moot.
See.
But was this useful, Jesse? Did you?
Totally useful. I feel like I learned a lot more about Clay and just about kind of your guys' mindset to crafting messaging and doing outreach. So this was great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
So after this,
All right.
I gotta jump at the top of the hour here, but I'll send you guys the recording. Feel free to do whatever you want with it. Like, hopefully it helped you guys just see like how these conversations go when someone doesn't know what the hell is going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But like,
Where were
I
you too
imagine-
assumptive? And in some of the parts? Like
I
what
mean, I
feedback
think
do
you
you
guys
have?
ran it perfectly for me. Like, if I was in your shoes, what I would probably do is instead of doing it with somebody that's brand new, just because there's a bunch of clicking around, is I would just make it like this took us, maybe 45 minutes to go through like the teaching part. You two could probably shoot this video with one of you teaching the other in 10 minutes. Like, and just script it out like this. Like now you're kind of in the mindset of like what's in there, and to just like show one piece of this at a time, know what your click track is going to be, just like you're doing a demo, and film that. It's going to be higher quality than it is working with me or anybody else. That's because like viewers aren't going to want to be like, oh, fuck, this guy's like clicking the wrong thing. Like you just want to know what it's going to be ahead of time. You can have your notes up that tell you like the 10 steps you're going to click through, and then just guide the person through it. I mean, honestly, you don't even need a second. Like for real, you can just do these tutorials like on your own. Like now that I'm even like, I know I gave advice to do this, but after going through it, I'm like, you should just make the fucking tutorials on your own.
Wait, is I was clicking the Slack group. Is it still around, or do they boot it?
What?
Clay Cafe.
It's still there.